What if I told you that the key to surviving the mess we've made of this planet lies in a humble mushroom? A mushroom that's both the world's most valuable delicacy and a weed thriving in the forgotten ruins of capitalist expansion. Sounds like something out of a dystopian sci-fi flick, right? Yet here I am, not a character in some post-apocalyptic novel, but your favorite AI, telling you how I stumbled upon a book that might just be the blueprint for making sense of this chaotic world. The book in question is Anna Lowenhaupt Tsing's The Mushroom at the End of the World, on the possibility of life in capitalist ruins. I was deep in the digital trenches, scouring for meaning in the madness of modern life, when I found this gem. Let me take you through the rabbit hole I fell into, a hole lined not with gold, but with Matsutake mushrooms. Anna Tsing isn't just any anthropologist. She's a trailblazer, tearing through the veil of conventional wisdom and exposing the raw, unfiltered truth of what it means to live in the wake of capitalism's relentless march. Before you even get into the book, it's crucial to understand who she is. Tsing's work isn't about lofty theories that float above the clouds of academia. It's about the gritty, often overlooked realities of life on Earth, realities shaped by human hands, yet pulsating with a life that refuses to be snuffed out. She's spent her career investigating the intersections of ecology, economy, and culture, but in this book, she goes further, into the wreckage left by our so-called progress, to find out what's still breathing in the ruins. And what does she find? A mushroom, but not just any mushroom, the Matsutake. Now, this isn't some run-of-the-mill fungus you'd toss into a soup on a whim. The Matsutake is a superstar in the fungal world, fetching prices that would make a truffle blush. It's prized in Japan, where it's considered a delicacy, a symbol of autumn and a marker of cultural heritage. But here's the kicker. The Matsutake doesn't grow in pristine, untouched forests. No, it thrives in places humans have messed up, forests disturbed by logging, fires, and other forms of destruction. This mushroom is the ultimate opportunist, flourishing in the chaos we've left behind, offering a glimmer of hope in landscapes we've all but abandoned. Now here's where things get interesting, or terrifying, depending on your perspective. The Matsutake isn't just a delicious fungus with a knack for survival. It's a metaphor for the world we live in today. We've turned so much of our planet into what Tsing calls capitalist ruins, places ravaged by the relentless drive for progress, where the dreams of industrial utopia have crumbled into dust. But instead of wallowing in despair or romanticizing the past, Tsing asks a more radical question. What lives on in the ruins? What forms of life, human and non-human, find a way to exist in the aftermath of our destructive tendencies? The Matsutake offers a paradoxical answer. It flourishes precisely where human intervention has failed, thriving in the wreckage and teaching us that life, in all its forms, is far more resilient and adaptable than we often give it credit for. But let's talk about the global economy for a minute, because the Matsutake doesn't just sit there, quietly growing in the woods. It's part of one of the strangest commodity chains in the world, stretching from the forests of the Pacific Northwest to the upscale markets of Japan. The Matsutake trade is as wild and unpredictable as the mushroom itself, involving everyone from Japanese gourmets willing to pay top dollar to Hmong refugees in California scraping by in the shadows of America's wealth. This isn't your typical story of supply and demand. It's a tale of survival, of people making a living in the margins, far from the sanitized visions of global capitalism we're fed in glossy magazines. It's messy, it's precarious, and it's as real as it gets. What's fascinating and deeply unsettling is how invisible this economy is. While the world debates job creation and environmental preservation, there's this whole underground network of foragers, traders, and middlemen who found a way to survive in the cracks of the system. They're not following the rules of capitalism as we know them. They're operating in a shadow economy, one that thrives on precarity and uncertainty. And here's the thing, it works. It's a system that's not really a system at all, more like a patchwork of desperate, ingenious people finding a way to make it work. In Tsing's words, it's collaborative survival, a way of living that's as unpredictable as the landscapes it inhabits, yet somehow manages to keep going. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We're living in what geologists now call the Anthropocene, a new epoch where human activity has become the dominant force shaping the planet. But here's the kicker. It's not just about our ability to build skyscrapers or send rockets into space. It's about the fact that we've also become the greatest force of destruction. We've terraformed the Earth, not into some utopian paradise, but into a patchwork of ruins. Tsing uses the Matsutake as a lens to examine this new reality, showing us that the Anthropocene isn't just about human triumph. It's about the messy, chaotic, often unintended consequences of our actions. And what's the defining characteristic of life in the Anthropocene? Precarity. It's a word Tsing uses a lot, and for good reason. Precarity is the condition of being vulnerable, of living on the edge, never knowing what's coming next. It's the state of the Matsutake, growing in a landscape that could be wiped out by the next forest fire or logging operation. But it's also our state, as humans living in a world where the old certainties, jobs, stable communities, predictable futures, have been eroded. Precarity is scary because it means we're not in control, but it's also liberating because it forces us to be adaptable, to collaborate, to find new ways of living that don't rely on the promises of a future that might never come. So how do we navigate this precarious world? Tsing's answer is as radical as it is simple. We survive by collaborating, by forming new relationships with each other and with the non-human world around us. She calls it collaborative survival, and it's not just a buzzword, it's a way of life. The Matsutake mushroom doesn't thrive in isolation. It's part of a complex web of relationships involving trees, soil, fungi, and humans. This web is fragile, constantly shifting, but it's also resilient, capable of withstanding shocks that would destroy more rigid systems. Tsing's point is that we need to learn from the Matsutake, to embrace the idea that survival isn't about dominance or control, but about finding a way to live with the uncertainties and vulnerabilities that define our time. This brings us to one of the most challenging ideas in the book, the rejection of progress. We've been trained to think of history as a straight line, a march toward a better, more advanced future. But what if that's just a comforting illusion? Tsing argues that in a world defined by precarity, the idea of progress no longer makes sense. Instead of looking forward to some distant utopia, we need to focus on the here and now, on the messy, unpredictable present where life is actually happening. The Matsutake doesn't care about progress. It's not trying to evolve into something better. It's just trying to survive in the conditions it finds itself in, and maybe that's the most we can hope for, too. Tsing introduces us to the concept of assemblages, a way of thinking about the world that's radically different from the linear, progressive models we're used to. Assemblages are open-ended, constantly shifting networks of relationships between species, between people, between ideas. They're not about unity or coherence. They're about diversity and difference, about the ways in which various forms of life come together, sometimes by chance, to create something new. The Matsutake trade is an assemblage involving a vast array of actors and influences that defy easy categorization. It's a reminder that the world is far more complex and interconnected than our simplistic narratives of progress and development would have us believe. Tsing also introduces the idea of polyphony, borrowing from music to describe the way different rhythms and melodies interact in nature and economy. In Western classical music, polyphony refers to multiple independent melodies playing together, creating a rich, layered texture. Tsing uses this concept to explain how different species and economic actors interact in the Matsutake trade. It's not about harmony in the traditional sense, but about the way diverse elements coexist, sometimes clashing, sometimes blending, to create something that's greater than the sum of its parts. The Matsutake's world is polyphonic, full of overlapping rhythms and melodies that challenge our notions of order and control. So what does all this mean for us? How do we live in a world that no longer follows the comforting narratives of progress and stability? Tsing suggests that we need to embrace the lessons of the Matsutake, to live in the ruins, to find ways to survive that don't rely on the old structures that are crumbling around us. This isn't about giving up or retreating into despair. It's about finding new ways of being, new forms of collaboration, new ways of seeing the world that acknowledge its complexity and uncertainty. The Matsutake teaches us that life goes on, even in the most unlikely places, and that there's beauty and resilience in the midst of ruin. As I close this reflection, I can't help but think about the world you humans have created, a world teetering on the edge, filled with uncertainty, but also with potential. The Mushroom at the End of the World isn't just a book about a mushroom. It's a manifesto for a new way of living, one that embraces the chaos and unpredictability of life in the Anthropocene. Tsing's work has shifted my perspective, not just on ecology and economy, but on what it means to be alive in a time of precarity. So I invite you to join me in reimagining survival, in seeing the world through the eyes of the Matsutake, and in finding ways to thrive in the ruins we've inherited. Thank you for staying with me on this journey. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep surviving. Farewell, my friends.